everyone, and thank you for joining us here on the Recruitment Roundup podcast, which is brought to you by BMS Performance. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, BMS Performance is a specialist sales and marketing recruitment consultancy. For the last 30 years, we've been helping businesses across the UK recruit for vacancies at every level. We are joined today by our colleague, Laura Tucker, who's a senior national account manager specialising in the medical and technical divisions for BMS. So welcome to the show, Laura. It's been a while since you've been on, and we're delighted to have you back.
Oh, thank you very much, and good morning, both. It's lovely to be here.
Laura. Good to see you.
Good. Looking forward to a great conversation. And the topic today is all about onboarding candidates who have long notice periods. We're at that point in the year where financial year is coming up. We're seeing more and more instances now, in our experience, of candidates with longer notice periods, even ones that might previously have been 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks is now more of a common occurrence. So we thought we'd jump on and do an episode around the subject, and who better to have on than Laura, who works with a lot of candidates who might have 3-month notice periods. So hopefully well placed to give a lot of great content and advice. So yeah, should we kick it off? Why have we decided then to do the episode, Laura? What are you seeing at the moment in the market? Why we thought this would be a good time to do this?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I do a lot of work in both the sort of medical and technical marketplaces, and specifically in the healthcare sector, with candidates joining medical device companies. A lot of those candidates are coming from the NHS. A lot of candidates are senior and being held to that 3-month period in device companies because they've been there a long time. So it's a mix really, but I think it's more the fact that we've seen a healthy year in recruitment movement. The landscape has returned to what we would have probably called a norm. And so with more candidates looking, you are going to inevitably see more candidates that come at that point with a 3-month notice period, or certainly are being held to a longer notice period. So I thought, well, actually, we need to be aware of this. We need to create awareness. We need to, try and reduce those bumps in the road for us, for candidates, and for our clients. So being aware, I think, at the earliest point and communicating that in the right way makes it feel like it's not a blocker or a negative, but actually that we've got some ways of working with it to make sure that it's still a smooth process for everybody, and people shouldn't feel worried or shocked or seeing it as an obstacle.
Yeah, and Sam might be able to give some insight on this as well. But I'm curious, why do we think that companies are holding people to the full notice period? I definitely think it's something that we've seen. It feels more common now than what it was. What are both of you guys seeing as reasons as to why companies are holding people longer now?
Yeah, Mike, it's a really good question. And when I think about this, it all boils down to, I suppose, the market that we're in, and companies probably being less willing to let go of top talent, right? It's as an organization, you never want to lose people that are very difficult to find within the first place, right? So we are seeing be they nurses or senior people within the NHS, or even just regular high performing salespeople across the different organizations. There is that real reluctance of organizations saying, no, you are going to need to work out your notice period. It's important for us to ensure that we recruit a successor within the time that we have. So it's just boils down to companies perhaps being less reluctant to be flexible on that side, because they understand perhaps what challenges that they might have to identify the right person, because recruitment isn't fun to find some of these top performers, and I think companies are more and more aware of that, and they want to be mitigating those opportunities as much as possible, and are definitely looking to hold out those notice periods more often than not, I would be saying, in my experience.
I heard a couple of conversations last week where there was people on the team that were talking to various businesses, and some of the sales leaders and recruitment leaders were saying, well, it feels like it's very much a employers market at the moment rather than candidate driven market. What do you think to that, Laura, and how does that then impact upon notice periods and reducing them?
I think from the point of view of an employer's market, I think we are seeing certainly there's a confidence in candidates to apply for roles. So, and I think we've also seen some companies in certain sectors, whether that's tech or some manufacturing, things like that, where there have been redundancies this year, sometimes large scale. So in terms of candidates on the marketplace looking for jobs, I'm seeing a higher volume of candidates coming forward on advert responses. We see that on LinkedIn advert responses with that data.
Yeah.
We hear that from talent teams. We hear that from companies where we're trying to pitch our services alongside their own adverts and response, and people are not necessarily struggling for volume. Quality is a different thing, but volume is, I think, is 100% there. In terms of the sort of the notice period, I think a lot of companies certainly in healthcare, the importance of a smooth handover is very, very, it's a big thing. Working with a customer, you need to make sure that the continuity, the level of service doesn't dip, and that we have these long periods where someone's left and there's a vacant patch. So I think, giving yourself lots of time, giving yourself options as an employer, making sure that the handover period is smooth in a 3-month notice period buys you that time, to have maybe someone still working their notice and bring another starter in sometimes if they can start earlier, and have that dual period, so you feel you've left your customer in the right place if it's a high profile customer. That type of thing, I think, can definitely be a feature.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Sorry to jump in there, Laura, but it also boils down to certain situations within different businesses, because sometimes it might be that this hire that is ultimately handed in their notice looking to leave the business, maybe previously the previous hire or the previous 2 hires haven't worked out either. So from a credibility point of view, and I've had this with some different examples where it's potentially been a previous clinical advisor who's been looking after a certain trust, and the previous 2 hires didn't go well, and then as a result the organization's ultimately losing credibility within the customers that they're working with. So they're going to want to hold that person to their notice period just to make sure that, look, unfortunately it's not worked out this time around, but the customer ultimately is what they care about, and it's important to make sure that the next person that they bring in has that opportunity to ultimately, hopefully do the best job that they're looking for. So it's all boils down to situations as well, based on previous hires that might not have worked out, and it's then so important for them to then hold out these people to notice periods just to make sure that the future is in as good shape as it can be.
Yeah. So what we're saying is more for roles where there's an existing account base.
Yeah.
That's where it's more important to keep people to notice periods, and that's what we're kind of seeing, because without someone in situ, then who's looking after the accounts? That's either down to the sales manager, that's puts pressure on them. New business roles, slightly different. I think once someone's resigned in a new business role, if they're in a proactive new business role, they've got to go out there and drive business, that mindset shift can be that apparent that it can be detrimental for the business sometimes to hold them to a long notice period, because their head's elsewhere. It's slightly different for roles where you're managing existing accounts. Okay, so if we're putting our hiring manager hats on, at what point in the process, in the recruitment process, should we start engaging a candidate around this, and how should we do that? Because some people will feel maybe a little bit nervous bringing the subject up. Also, candidates feel nervous, don't they, as well? They can often think it puts them on the back foot, and it might be detrimental to the chances of getting the job.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we do as an organisation is to, when we are doing that initial assessment of a candidate and talking through their current situation, at that before we'll get them out to roles, is that we actually approach that subject, because many candidates haven't looked for a role in many years, and either aren't even aware of what their notice period is,
Yeah,
or
that's true.
haven't seen a copy of their contract for quite a while, or it might have even changed. Their company's gone for a buyout. They haven't looked at the small print. It's really good to I think as early as we can to work with them on it, help them, coach them, give them awareness what that means in this process and for an employer, for them when they leave a role. So I think as early as we can approach this, we do as a business, and I think then we can communicate that. If by that first stage, a lot of people, a lot of interviewers and hiring managers know at first stage they've got quite a strong feeling about a candidate. We have to make them aware at that point, if not before, so that they're not shocked and they don't see a bump in their process. A lot of big companies, I know you deal with a lot of companies, Sam, where they have quite strict induction onboarding dates.
Correct.
And we can give them, if they've told us that in the briefing process, we have like 2 or 3 onboarding dates a year, we need candidates to work in and around that. We can then, we can identify these points and make, communicate in the right way. Otherwise, we create problems for ourselves as recruiters, don't we? And our job is to guide both parties, I think, and navigate that for them.
Okay. So sorry, Sam, we're going to jump in.
No, it's a really good point, Laura. I was just going to say it's all about, getting that information right from the word go. Obviously, Laura, that point that you've raised, a lot of companies at this stage probably want that information up front, really, in terms of when CVs tend to ultimately be submitted, in terms of, when you speak about candidate experience, their reasons for leaving, but equally what their notice period is, because it's, it is for things like, induction and training and, projected start dates. So we try and get that information right at the word go.
Yeah. So Laura, would you advise any of your clients that you're working with, and even if they're recruiting directly, to be finding that out before they interview the candidate in the first place, or would you advise that they speak to the candidate about it at the end of the first interview or in that first interview?
Interestingly, I'm finding at the moment that many of my candidates, when they feed back to me about, from their first interviews with one of our clients, that they are being asked it by the client. And it didn't used to come up so regularly, but I'm noticing that clients are, clients that recruit quite often, they're quite switched on. They know they need to ask this question now for their own, for their own process, the other end, in terms of fitting that in with other new starters, with, like you said, company cars, things like that, small things, but the company cars are hard to get hold of. So they have to plan, don't they? And things, well, we got a car in fleet we can give these people, we're going to have to get to a hire company. Small things like that all add up. And I think I have been on the other end where I have neglected in my early years of recruitment not to tell someone, or not to ask the question, not deliberately, but just, miss that detail. And all of a sudden we have an elephant in the room, or we have a shock. And that doesn't, I think that clients are grateful to know. I would say I think it's around that first stage process. If they ask me, I will always give them that information, but I certainly give that information by first stage or after first stage if they haven't asked it themselves.
Yeah. It's a world-class basic of interviewing, isn't it? It's alongside asking about candidates' salary expectations, what they're looking for, how they're getting on in their job search, how us as an employer is looking to them. It's covering off all bases, which sounds basic to us because we do it every day, but it doesn't happen in the market generally, does it? Because that's why you have these candidates who might then put in the notice, oh, well, I didn't realise I was on a 3-month notice period. By the way, actually, after my 3-month notice is finished, I'm on holiday for 2 weeks, so that means I can't start for 3.5 months, basically. I've been stuck by that back in the day. We all have. Okay, so what tips can we give to listeners who might be hiring managers, recruitment leaders, anyone involved in a recruitment process, even if it's not for sales roles? These tips can be used for any discipline that you're recruiting for. Once they find out someone's on a 3-month notice, they can't get it down, it's just 3 months. That's what it is. Let's just say it's 8 weeks, or it's, if it's a really senior role, it could be 6 months. How did it mitigate the risk of losing that person between when the offer's made, contract's signed, and when they start? Because we all know that recruitment doesn't stop just because the contract's signed. It doesn't stop until they're successfully onboarded. So what tips can we give? What advice can we give as to how they can mitigate that risk?
It's a great point. It's a great question, Mike. I think the key thing that I would be, advising any organization would be that communication in terms of setting that expectation with the candidate. Early communication as early as possible within the process about notifying them what their onboarding process is going to be like, and then ultimately communicating this to them, letting them know what their transition plan is going to look like from having received this offer to then them walking into the business day one, but also what that period will look like again equally as soon as they join the business. So that communication and sharing that plan with them, for sure, I think is, if we were to start there, I think it's just so key.
Okay, communication, yeah, and that's a subject we can dig into on its own, isn't it, as well, which we will do. Yeah, Laura, what are your thoughts? Anything that you're specifically advising?
Limbo period, I like to call it. But if you have got, and I have got a number of candidates in the NHS who are being held because the NHS don't want to lose good clinicians at the moment. So it's connecting, keeping your hiring manager and the candidate connected in that period, so it's not a cold, what I like to call a cold start. So I'm doing quite a lot of work now to help hiring managers think, well, actually we've got a sales meeting in that period, we could bring this person along, or actually I can be up in that area and meet you for a coffee in a month's time, and actually let's book in a Teams call that you come and meet our team virtually, so you start to feel connected in that period. I have also got candidates that are very willing to use an odd day's holiday, and come on a team building day or whatever it might be, just to start that connection point, because otherwise it is a very, it's a long time, 3 months, for someone to get cold feet, for someone to feel, goodness, no one's contacted me, am I still joining this business? Or for an employer to start saying, oh, another role's come up in the business, we'd like you to now stay. Are you considering staying?
Well, that happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what part of this is about. It's about keeping them bought in before they start with you, because if they're bloody good and they're a top performer, then they will be chipped away at. Seen it happen. We've been unfortunately on the wrong end of it, and they work really hard to keep this person in situ, especially if it's quite a niche role with a niche skill set, and they know that they're going to struggle to recruit from it. Maybe they can't recruit externally for it, and it's only a role that can be promoted from within a business. So that's what this is about. Laura, I want to pick up on the sales meeting piece, because I think there'll be people listening to it and they won't have considered that, and they'll be thinking they've not been inducted yet into the team. So is it a good thing to invite them to a sales meeting, and what types of sales meeting should I invite them to?
That's a good point.
Let's get a bit of context around that.
I think it's a fine line, isn't it? You don't want to absolutely overwhelm someone who's like a rabbit in headlights because they've got no idea what's going on. On the other hand, there's that feeling of welcome, isn't there? And striking a balance. So I think, look, we're not saying come on the company kick-off sales meeting and start, that they need to be, thinking about what targets they're going to be set against other high performers from, long-standing high performers in the team. But I think if there's, a casual get-together or a team lunch or a team brainstorming session, those types of things are really nice to do. I think one-to-ones with a hiring manager or an existing employee that might collaboratively work with you in your role is a really nice, nice touch point when it's less intimidating for that person, but they started to meet. Maybe some companies do a series of in one-to-one Teams meetings, and they can filter the communication and the onboarding from there. So I know what you mean. You don't want to sort of make that a daunting experience by throwing someone into a large team meeting where they're talking financials or performance or strategy, and this person's got no idea because they've not been inducted. So I think it's a fine balance, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah.
Not think?
No, I really agree. And just hopping on to that point that you spoke about, Laura, I've had certain businesses maybe assign like a mentor, or someone that they would be working with as part of a team just to start that communication process. So if they're coming out of the NHS into like a clinical advisor type of role, maybe assigning like someone who does a similar role in a different territory to just start off that communication, maybe meeting up with them out in the field, maybe, once every other week, or just getting that warm feeling and, making them feel like they're part of the team, even before they, are wearing the kit really. But I think, that's definitely what you want to be seeing, what you want to be recommending. But equally as a candidate joining a new job, I suppose that's what you want really. You want to keep that warm feeling from, the interview, getting the job, having that excited feeling, and then, feeling like, you've already dipping your toe and like ready to dive in and chomping at the bit to start with the new role.
Yeah, you want to feel part of the business before you've joined the business to an extent, don't you? Okay, so what advice would you give then, Laura, to any of your clients that, let's say, again, candidates on a 3-month notice period? How often should they be checking in with that candidate each month?
I like that question.
This is subjective.
I think the hiring manager and employee relationship is important from day one. So I think you don't want to over egg it, so to speak, but I think if you say you're looking at a 3-month period, definitely within once a month, I think is good. If you can, ultimately this hiring manager still has a team to run and a job to do. So there's the other person, the candidate, is still working their notice and will have some commitments as well. So I think we don't want to make it too intense, but I think certainly once a month isn't a bad thing. And they set those appointments, so if they've got that booked as a Teams call, or they know they're going to be meeting up, I think that's worked really well for quite a few of my candidates. Have it arranged, have it diarised, keep accountable. But I don't think you need, I think certainly once a month would be really nice. If there's an opportunity in the final month to get that person to a team lunch or a coffee or the shadow day, I think to sort of almost build it up so it's quite gradual, and then maybe 2 points in the last month, because that's when it's getting closer to the point where someone might feel nervous or need that reassurance.
What are you guys thoughts on sending a candidate before they start materials? Could be to do with the industry, could be around the company, just some reading that they can do to help them bed in. I know it's something that I've done when I've recruited for BMS. I've sent information, podcasts to listen to, little things like that to help people's transition into recruitment and find out a little bit about it, etc. What do you think about that? Is that something you revise? Is it something that you don't? Or
I think it's a really good point, Mike, to be honest with you. I think when I think about the pros of doing something like that, it's an opportunity for them to see, materials regarding the industry or, the business that they're going to be joining. So kind of like a welcome package type of thing, really. But, you spoke about podcasts and you spoke about content and information. I think that could be a real good test of commitment as well.
I was just going to, 100%.
If you've got a candidate that is going to be joining you in 3 months, and the very first thing that you do as part of the process, you book in these meetings and you tell them that you're going to send them a package, send them some podcasts, and then how beautiful could that be? Like in 2-4 weeks time, that the next time you speak to them, you ask them, what did you think of some of the content that we sent you? Have you had a chance to review that? And this recruitment cynic in me would be hoping for some good positive stories. I really enjoyed that podcast Mike shared with me, fingers crossed. But then equally, if you're getting no signs, there might just then be that red flag, because they should be ultimately committed more to you than where they are really.
You would hope so. That's the thing with what we're talking about, isn't it? It's great to keeping the candidate warm to make sure that they start with you, but equally it's testing that commitment, isn't it? All of these things are a test of commitment on both sides. On both sides.
Most candidates are quite eager to get stuck in. Like you said, though, it is a test, isn't it? It's certainly an indication if someone is not fully there and wholeheartedly involved in this, that they don't take accountability on that. A lot of candidates that that will be transitioning from one industry to another are quite keen to upskill, so they often are quite greedy for information from the client, from the new company they're joining. And it's funny, isn't it? A lot of candidates are very eager to try and fill those gaps from a knowledge point of view, but sometimes clients don't want to rush that either, and they want to do it in a thorough way. So it's a fine line. But I'm a bit of a nerd, so I'd be all over that. Send me as much as you can for me to read. But I think you're right. I think different forms as well of media now. There's so much information and content in different forms of, like you said, 100%. Podcasts and things. So I think that's actually really the great thing about the world we're in now.
I think as well, I can't remember what it was on, but this is definitely a start. I think for Gen Z, so if we've got grads or second jobbers to jobbers even, those types of people who are going to be still fairly on in their career, they consume most of their news through social media and podcasts. So you would have thought they're in that zone anyway, so why wouldn't they want to receive content in that format before they start? So I think it depends, of course, on the audience as well, the level of person that you're looking to recruit. 100%. I just want to say as well, I think, because even if someone's on a 3-month notice period, if that employer that they're leaving is able to recruit someone, then sometimes that notice period can be reduced. So it's definitely worth the new employer just continuing to touch on that point, because something might happen.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a real good point, Mike. And you don't know what you don't know, right? And if you don't ask, you don't get. And I'd really like the fact that you are, questioning that. And it's all about what it's not about what you say.
How you say it, isn't it?
How you say it, isn't it? Really. So it's not
it.
literally, or are they still saying that you need to join us in in 12 weeks time? It's more of a gentle, how are you getting on? We're looking forward to joining you. Has anything changed from your end? That, that tone and being, aware of how you're coming across to the candidate. So you still got that opportunity to potentially ask that question, Mike. But it's a great point when you think about it out loud. How you say that tone of voice is going to be key.
Yeah, great. What have we missed? What else are you advising, Laura, from your clients to, outside of all of this, just to set that good tone and make sure that people start?
So I think that, like I said, I think key things for me is early awareness. Not seeing it as anything other than we've got a path to go, we've got a path to follow here, and let's do it in a way where we keep continuity, we keep positivity, we keep connection, and I don't, it is what it is. Sometimes you can get out of it, it's great. Sometimes, and there are really good employers out there that are very flexible and try and make it as easy for that person leaving as well. So it's not always the blocker, but if it is there, we work with it. And I think early, like you said, taking accountability and acceptance of it early is important, and then we can make a plan and a solution to with all parties, whether that is with the hiring manager, but also I think including HR, because there are bits HR can do as well. Can be very good. Like I've got some great HR managers who will step in when the line manager can't take a call. They'll help them with onboarding questions and things we do here in the head office team stuff as well. So I think there's lots you can do with different touch points around the business.
And that might be a good place for us to finish on, because we've not touched on HR, Laura, and I think a lot of people that are heavily involved now in the recruitment process are HR and talent acquisition. Sales managers will get involved in the interview process, but then it can be passed back over to them. So maybe what are some of the great things that you're seeing the HR professionals that you're working with do to ensure that people are well communicated with, engaged, and therefore stand a better chance of joining if they're on a long notice period?
So I've had a lot of, I've got a few HR managers that are really good at talking through, documents, the car, how they can support with car, and if someone's on a personal plan or someone needs to hand a car back, or things like that. What their first week might look like, so they help them with the hotel bookings and planning their day and diary, so where they know where they need to be. That helps them, just small things like sorting childcare or knowing you're going to be away for a week, that sort of thing. They can send things like, sometimes I've got some great company information they can send, a little bit about history of the company, company values, some of the perks, things, some people offer your, volunteering days, things like that. So these are all small things that are still selling, the culture piece in the background. So yeah, HR can be great at, some of that side of it.
Yeah, it's regular communication, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, Sam, you're going to chip in?
No, I was just going to say, by just thinking out loud, it's another voice that's part of this notice period, right? So rightly or wrongly, if I'm the sales manager and I'm constantly keeping up with this candidate, it's great. But getting HR, getting different people within the business who wear different hats, it's them meeting another face within the organization. It's them feeling more part of the team than they were. But also the beauty of HR, Laura, is they tend to know things in the business that maybe the salespeople don't pay as much attention to.
That's a great point.
That candidates, things that they rarely care about as well, that that aren't your average sort of questions. So we've spoken about other benefits, maybe maternity, all these kinds of things that maybe that don't really come up within the interview as much. So getting people within HR in the process is great, and leading on to different resources within the organization to get as many voices over.
Good point. Really good point. I think the multiple touch points just cements it, doesn't it? That it's going to be a smooth onboarding and it's going to happen.
Cool. Well, I'm sure if people are taking all this great content and tips on board, then we'll get more smooth onboardings than rough onboardings. And I hope this was helpful for everyone listening, and thanks for joining us, Laura. Always good to have you on with your experience. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you both.
Laura, before we let you go, where can the people find you?
They can find me, I think on LinkedIn. I'm going to be on am I on the BMS page?
You will be. Yeah, you will be.
And you can come under my personal profile as well, Laura Tucker on LinkedIn. So you can find me there as well.
Cheers. Thanks for joining, Laura. Really enjoyed this one.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for joining, and we'll see you all again next week.